Around the nation, builders have literally thousands of homes that are either nearly completed or have already been completed and don't have buyers. So because of this, they're offering these amazing incentives. If you're watching this, you may be someone who's interested in purchasing one of these houses. So in today's video, I want to talk about the pros and cons of buying an inventory home straight from the builder. Stick around. What's up, everybody? It's Jeff with Jeff West Properties, your host for the Conroe Living Channel, where we identify and celebrate everything that makes Conroe, Texas not only one of the fastest growing cities in America, but one of the best places in the nation to live. You may have heard recently from different reports, including on this very own channel, that builders have been in a bind for the last several months because they went from hyper building to keep up with the crazy demand of the last couple of years of the housing market to being left holding the bag when all that demand went away when interest rates rose. Because builders aren't in the business of holding houses, they've been coming up with some pretty creative ways to get these houses off their books, including offering interest rates that are below what the current interest rate is, paying off some of the interest rate for the first couple of years through things like the 2-1 buy-down program, or just giving literally thousands of dollars to buyers to use for whatever they want, including down payment and even just leaving that equity in their home. I'm currently working with a handful of buyers as well as fielding calls pretty much every day from people who are looking for that exact thing. In fact, the number one thing I'm working with right now are buyers wanting to buy inventory homes. One of my clients, I've come to find out in recent conversations, has been a little bit disappointed in the process because she went into it looking at only the upside and didn't think about some of the downside. Because of this experience, I thought it'd be a good idea to make this video about buying an inventory home, both the good and the bad of it, as opposed to buying like a resale home or even building a custom home on your own. So do you want the good news or the bad news first? You're watching a video, so you can't answer me, but I'm going to assume you said bad news. So first, let's talk about some of the drawbacks of buying an inventory home. First, you're going to have little to no choice when it comes to the design of the house. One of the great things about building a house from the ground up is you get to be involved in the design process. If it's an existing floor plan through a builder, you have the opportunity to go and pick out things like flooring and countertops, paint color. And if it's a custom home, you can make the house exactly what you want. In fact, the only limitations you have are money and engineering. Well, physics. I mean, I guess if you wanted to build a house upside down, that may be cool, but probably not practical and more than likely impossible. With an inventory home, all the design elements are already picked out, so you get what you get. Number two, you don't get to choose your own location. If you're building a custom home, you can just go out and buy land wherever it's available and build on that. But if you're buying an inventory home, it is going to be in a builder's neighborhood, and you're not going to have choice as to where that's going to be. That client that I mentioned earlier that was disappointed, she was disappointed in the actual neighborhood. She loved the house, but didn't like where the house was. Now, she had researched the house. She looked at it on a map. She looked at the school districts and all that. But until she was able to actually stand there, she didn't realize that it just wasn't vibing with her. That's why I encourage my clients to go at least once out to the area you're going to be living, and preferably twice. Once to get a feel for the city itself and the general area, and then once you've picked out a house, to get a feel for the house and the neighborhood. In fact, I even encourage them to go at different times of day. You may fall in love with a house in the morning, but then realize what a headache it's going to be if you've got a carpool line sitting in front of your driveway at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Not only do you not get to pick where that house is, you also don't get to pick the lot that it sits on. When you're building a house from the ground up, you have a chance to choose your lot, and there are different types of lots with different premiums on them. There are more desirable lots like things on a cul-de-sac or something that faces like north, so it's better for your utility bills. And in some cultures, they actually would prefer the house to face northeast because it is an indication of wealth and prosperity. With an inventory home, you have no choice. You don't get to design it, and you don't get to choose what lot it's on. You get what you get, and it sits where it sits. The third downside to buying an inventory home is more than likely a lot of the houses in the neighborhood are going to look the same. That may not be a big deal for you, but if you're someone who really wants a house that is unique, you're probably not going to find it in a builder neighborhood. that same floor plan that you have is probably going to be all over your street, or it may even be the entire street. Now, there are different elevations and they'll use different paint choices on the outside, but it's still the exact same plan that you have. In some older neighborhoods, you actually have a lot of variety. Where I lived in Houston, we would have a mid-century modern house right across from a colonial that was sitting next door to a Craftsman. You're just not going to find that in a new build neighborhood or a neighborhood that is created directly by the builders. You may find something like that in a neighborhood that has nothing but custom homes with a bunch of different builders of your choosing, but that's usually at a higher price point. The fourth downside is that new doesn't always mean perfect. There's a misconception that if you buy a new house, that means that the house is going to be perfect and it's going to work perfectly, but that's not always necessarily the case. In an existing house, one that is a resale, someone's already lived in it, if there were problems in the construction, they would have long since found out about it, and that wouldn't be your headache. But when you're the first person to live in it, you're basically a guinea pig to make sure that that house actually works the way it's supposed to. As an example, I have a good friend who was talking to me about his coworker who had just bought a new house. Now, they had been delayed for months being able to move into it because there was a back order on the brick that they needed for the side of the house.
Well, it's going to take forever.
So they built everything and the brick went on last. So they finally moved in. And within a week or so, they noticed that there was water on the floor in their first floor, in their kitchen. And they looked around. They couldn't find where the leak was coming from. They called the builder. The builder looked around as well, said, "We can't find it. It's probably just condensation from the HVAC system," or something like that. But then a couple more weeks went by, and it just kept getting worse. The water started getting deeper, and it started to smell. So they brought the builder back out. The builder ended up having to open up a wall. And when they did, just water gushed out of that wall.
Where that wall of tsunami water.
And they found out what the problem was. Apparently, when they had put that brick on the side of the house, they had done it in a way where it actually broke one of the pipes in the wall. That pipe happened to be the sewage line running from the second story. So all of that water was their raw waste that they were waiting around in. Now, that doesn't happen often. That is a kind of unique situation. But things do happen, and it's kind of tough to be living in a new house and having to be back in a construction zone because something didn't get put together the way that it was supposed to. The number 5 downside, you'll be living in a construction zone. So unless you buy the last house in the neighborhood, chances are you're going to be living next to construction, homes continuing to be built. That means that you might have to wake up to wood saws or people banging on roofs. You'll have a hard time getting through your community at times because you're going to have to navigate your way through a bunch of cement trucks to get into your driveway. And you have to be very careful with your tires and keep a watch out for them because inevitably loose nails end up all over the roads in these new home communities. I've lost 4 tires over the last few years just by driving through these new communities. Construction crews are usually done in the evening, so if you're someone who gets up early and goes into the office and is home in the evening, it may not be that big a deal to you.
When can construction resume?
But if you're one of the many people around the nation that are still working remotely, this could prove to be a huge headache for you.
We can't, there's construction.
Hey, real quick, if you're getting something from this video, I would really appreciate it if you'd click that like button. Every time there's interaction with a video, it tells YouTube that this needs to be put in front of more people. And honestly, who wouldn't want to see more of this face? Now, maybe none of these things are a big deal in themselves, but all of them together may be more of a problem. Or maybe one of these things is going to be a deal breaker for you. It's important to know those things going in so that you can either be prepared or you can know whether or not this is the right opportunity for you. Now, like I said at the beginning of this video, a lot of my buyer clients right now are looking specifically at inventory homes because there's a lot of good reasons to purchase them. One reason to buy an inventory home is they are designed to appeal to the most buyers. Because builders know that they don't have a buyer when this house is completed, they want to design it to appeal to the most people. That means that more than likely you're not going to get stuck with shag carpeting. Another reason is because you'll know exactly what you're going to get. One of the most stressful things about building a house is until it's done, you don't know what it's really going to look like. You can see the blueprints, you can see the write-ups, but until you're standing in it at the very end, you won't know what it's going to become. And sometimes you may not like the end result. That's why in those HGTV shows, the most dramatic part is always the end when they reveal the finished product. The buyers have seen the mock-ups that, people like the Property Brothers have given them, but it's not until they're standing in it where they actually finally have this emotion of falling in love with it or being angry with it if it didn't turn out the way that they wanted it to. With an inventory home, you know exactly what you're getting the moment you walk through the door. Number 3, it's less stressful. Moving is stressful enough in itself without adding to it things like building your own house and all the stresses that come along with that, or even moving into a resale house where you may want to redo the floors first or change out a bathroom. That's just adding stress to an already stressful situation. Whereas if you buy an inventory home, you just move your furniture in and live. Unless you want the shag carpeting, and then you got to do that yourself. Number 4, you'll save time. One of the most frustrating parts of building a home on your own is the completion date, not knowing when it's going to be. You may have one on paper, but that doesn't mean that's when the home is going to be finished. You have all sorts of things like construction delays, weather delays, delays with city permits, and if you're planning on moving in 9 months, it's very possible it could go on for a year or more.
The construction will never finish.
So that means you have to find flexible housing or possibly live with your family members, which is no fun. With an inventory home, it's ready when you are. And number 5, and this is the biggest one, you will save money. If you plan on building a custom home, just plan on your budget going well over what you think it's going to be, unless you are very well versed in doing this, and even then, good luck.
I read it was $2 billion over budget.
Do you see a budget? I don't see a budget.
With resale homes right now, there's just not that many for sale because someone who's living in a home, unless they absolutely have to move, knows that if they sell it, they're going to have to buy another place that is just as expensive, and they're going to have a higher interest rate right now. So most of the sellers are just staying put, which means inventory is low, and as long as inventory is low, there's not a lot of negotiating power for buyers. On the other hand, with inventory homes, right now, as we sit in the beginning of 2023, there are still amazing incentives to get into these homes. And not only are you saving money when you purchase the house, they're brand new. So you're going to have modern plumbing, modern HVAC, modern installation, which means that more than likely your utility bills are going to be lower as well.
We can't afford not to, son.
Okay, so are there any pros or any cons that you think I left off of this list? If so, let me know in the comments. Buying a new inventory home can be a great opportunity as long as you understand the process and understand that there are some downsides that go with it.
Best thing to do, pros and cons list.
Pro, you get to share your pros and cons list with the other nerds.
If you're interested in learning more about one of the fastest growing cities in America, Conroe, Texas, make sure to subscribe to the Conroe Living Channel. On this channel, you're going to find not just property tours and neighborhood tours, but also things like the best restaurants, the best parks, the best microbrews, everything that makes up the DNA of one of the best places in the nation to live. Here's some videos you might want to check out to get you started.